Today we have another speed sculpting video. Super simple in theory. A log of wood, but I did it in a method that is not usual for me, and you'll see me fumble a couple times. I am not ashamed. This was suggested in the comment section of my last speed sculpt video by the subscriber and fellow content creator ASMR Gaming News, another male artist. I will put his channel link in the description below. And also feel free to comment below if there's something you'd be interested in seeing. I can't guarantee you, but I will look at the proposed object and gauge its difficulty. And there aren't a whole lot of things out there that can not be done in an hour when you think of single objects. But still, if you like a dragon, then I'm going to say no. But if you say like a weapon, a sword or something, or maybe I'm blanking on the name. Anyway, let me talk about this model. So normally the way you've seen me do stuff is start from a primitive object and model, and then I will UV it, and then I will sculpt it and bake, and then texture it. But instead, out of my comfort zone, because these speed sculpts are to practice different things, there's a method where you have a texture, like here you see now bark from a tree, and what I'm going to do is model the object based off of the texture. And I will use the bark and the cap of a chopped down piece of wood to shape the object itself, and kind of work completely based off of the texture. So here you see the wood being applied, and now I am doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it would have been chopped down, but I'm mostly going for effect. If I were to if I were to make, not so much properly, if I were to make if I were to make an actual chopped down log of wood, I'll tell you in just a few seconds here how close to finish, how easy this would be. Really basic. But I didn't want to be so generic. So, right now I'm grabbing the UVs, taking a sip of my coffee, and I'm bringing the UVs into Photoshop so that I can better gauge where to place the textures. And they're different sizes, so that messed me up a little bit. Now, the end result sorry, my roommates are being kind of loud. Okay. The end result is somewhat lower poly and nothing too fancy, as if it was going to be just a small object in the distance of a video game, or like a stack of logs in Last of Us, just kind of sitting there against the wall. See this, you can tell was chopped down with a chainsaw. It's the teeth going left and right. And I'm just killing anything outside of the bark of the tree. And it was going so slow. So I made my brush bigger and then completely gave up on the eraser tool and So pretty quick here. It's much more precise and clean, very clean. Then I was thinking, for simplicity of the object and speed, doing this method I'm not used to, should I keep this giant chunk of bark? And then I was like, no, not today. Next time. Next week, perhaps. I will think of doing smaller objects or more lively object like a clock or something. I mean, if there's no suggestion, um, I have a clock design in mind that I will eventually like to try anyway. I started to erase all the bark off this one side because I had a idea for what to do on the model. And at this point, I was going to make the top and the bottom half of the log of wood be two different models. I eventually changed that and decided to mirror everything. You'll see. Um, I'm slowly playing with some cards while I talk. Alright, so I'm just saving the texture now. And here we have wood done. No, it's too off. So this is where modeling based off of the texture comes into play. As you can see, sorry, I yawned. As you can see, I have to shape the bark shape the log to form with the bark. I'm incredibly tired right now. I've been awake normally like anyone else has, but I donated blood today for the 8th time. My 8th donation, and it's usually pretty exhausting after a little while. In the day, I mean. So I am slowly falling asleep. But I needed to get this done for you guys. I was going to do it yesterday, but I was pretty busy. So, edge by edge, we shape the tree. And there we go. Now, if I was just going to make a log of wood that was cut down, this video would be roughly 17 minutes and 30 seconds. Because there it is. But I wanted to play around some more and see what else I could do without sculpting and just modeling based off the texture. And it was about here I realized I should have spread out the UVs more vertically. But I just ended up mirroring the object and dealing with it. There are thousands and thousands of objects in video games that they're mirrored and you just don't know it. Guns, weapons, melee weapons, trash cans, you name it. Some of them are mirrored 8 times if they're cylindrical. Cars, stuff like that. The landlord is opening his door, making more noise. So here you're seeing where I decided to kill the edge loop, and I'm just going to end up beveling that down as if the bark was stripped off. But again, as always, make sure you work smart before you work hard. I've worked in construction. I've worked in the oil field. I've worked as kitchen manager and general manager. I've done janitorial. I've done so many industries. The only one that was physically exhausting was the oil field. And even in the oil field, it was before you work hard, because there's not a thing on this planet that we can do as humans that benefits from brute strength. Even weightlifting, powerlifting, there's cross grip, there's smarter ways to hold the bar so that when you lift it, it's not as difficult. Now, I'm not using like a 400-pound mouse, so working hard is difficult to do as an artist, but you can definitely work smart. So here I leaned forward on the camera because I was like, what are you doing? You're modeling two halves and doing the same thing twice. So here's more fumbling. But you can see now what I was trying to create is a bit of wood. A bit of bark that hangs over the edge. As if it was somewhat snapped off. Or they cut it and then they broke an edge off of the log and some bark stayed on at the end. And right now I'm having difficulty with the model. The program wasn't reacting the way it should. So I undid a bunch of work and tried to figure out what was going on. For starters, we were working on the bottom of the object and that was wrong. So I went back to the top. And I'm trying to figure out why it's squishing the texture. See, when I move the two parts away and close to each other, the texture squashes and stretches. That's not supposed to happen. So I was quite frustrated for a second, but then I just did it a different way. I just moved the UVs. See, for a few seconds there, I was trying to brute strength my way through a problem, and it wasn't working. So I worked smarter by changing the game plan. We got the job done. I chalk it up to having one less pint of blood in me than normal, and that's why I was making mistakes. Yeah, we'll go with that. Just moving each piece. edge loop that goes around because I got rid of it a while ago. I am doing the audio after I make this video, and I'm not so sure that I prefer it this way because now I have to take about 2.5 hours out of my day, and that's a lot of time. I don't mind, obviously, I just would like to get more stuff done. So, tell me if you prefer this method, and if you do, do another one. I'll probably flip back and forth between the styles. But here we have the bark overhang being created again, and it's again, I just have no clue why I couldn't think properly. I mean, everything I did was there's some cars driving by. There's only a thin pane of glass on my window. It's a very old building. Normally, a new window is 1, 2, sometimes 3 panes of glass plus a couple layers of air between each, and it all is there for soundproof and proofing. So right now I am trying to figure out a way to line up these UVs, and oh, sorry, I keep yawning. I am Sundays are rough for me. I only ever donate blood on Sunday because that's when my donation date rolls over. You're allowed 56 days between each donation, I believe. Let me see. Yes. Yeah, 56 days between donations. And they're changing the female donation date to be 86 days, I think. So, although I'm not female, I donate sometimes with 2 females, so it's not a competition, but they're trying to catch up to my donation count, and now I think it's just not going to be possible for them. All right. So we have now the bark overhang, and we're just figuring out where to place these little pieces for now. It was around, I actually, before this, I made here I am shaping the bark so that it's not like a flat edge. It would snap off like that. So I'm just altering the height of the edge here. So there's some variation with the silhouette. Always the silhouette. It's always. And there we go. Now I gotta pull this down. And now we're starting to get the look that I want. I'm selecting these edge loops to bevel them. When you bevel them, it adds extra detail possibility for the light to catch it and give you a proper curvature. Give the object proper curvature so that the light will better bend and form the object. And now some of the vertex points got really screwy, so I have to fix those before we continue forward. But tool is being very picky. See this bend here? Everything in CGI is triangles. In video games, in film, it's usually quads. But in video games, everything is triangles. And although you see, actually, I'll explain that in the next video. Why we do quads and why the game engine uses triangles. It's kind of cool, actually. break it some more. So I went to town cutting away at the model, and I was like, maybe you went too far. So I cut that off and I simplified the shapes. Right here, again, simplifying the shape. And then connecting it again. And we have a nice uniform-ish edge we can work with. Now, if you want this to, I'm not expecting anyone to go over every inch of this model. I'm simply going for look and to quickly glance at this and see that the wood grain needs to travel vertically along the log or horizontally, depending on how you're thinking of it. I have to spin it one way so it matches the rest of the grain. And then that's not enough. If we give this a little bit of width, then it will look as though the entire bark encases the wood. So here you can see the transition way better now that we have this small lip. It's all about thinking of it in real world terms and then breaking it down into very generic shapes. Now this isn't anything fantastic, the final product, but it was fun to make and I really hope you guys like it. Oh no, I yawned again. It's going to be very difficult to stay awake for the rest of the night. So now to fix the stretching of the UVs, I am simply grabbing them and readjusting them in the UV map here. There you have it. I saw those, if you remember those little squares from earlier, these are those. But they got totally crunched somehow, so I have to fix them so that they hold enough detail to some sort of information. I am just noticing now that my week of facial hair looks like I have a weird mustache in the video. I personally hate facial hair. On me, anyway. On me. Anyway. So now I'm cleaning up the edge, the transition edge between the foot of the log and the chipped off bark, because it had these dark pieces showing, which broke the flow, looked weird. So there we go. I'm just tucking them in a little bit. And that's a little better. See now, at a quick glance, and from a distance, in a video game, this would hold up. This would hold up a lot better than I thought it would. And now we're just putting this inside the bark area so that it makes sense. See, here is where I should have used more of the sheet. There's a whole half of the bottom there just sitting there unused for no reason, and that's unacceptable. But I made a playlist before this, and I was only able to put one song on there before I got too antsy and wanted to just make the video. So at this point, I had been listening to the same song for 45 minutes, and I was tired. So it didn't even occur to me till after everything that the UVs were only using half of the texture sheet. Okay, so I'm just doing small cleanups here before I go into texturing. straightening out the texture because it was all stretched and diagonal. Same thing on this side. Okay. And here I wanted to fix or tie up the piece of wood sticking out, the bark. So I just made an edge loop up there and cleaned it all up. We're so close to being done. I'm looking for something that I've used 100 million times. Mirror. Okay, there it is. A log of wood. This is more fumbling for you guys. I actually can't remember what I was trying to do here because none of this makes sense. I'm so sorry that today's speed sculpt was done on half a tank of gas. I even stopped modeling and just texted my brother here. What are you trying to do, Derek? You're making no sense whatsoever. Okay. I think eventually I just gave up. There. I think I finished there. Yeah. No. I'm still like lost. If you don't work in 3D and you're wondering what I'm doing, I don't even have a clue. Because at this point, when I started making this, I had one idea in mind on how to do this, and what I wanted, and now, at this point, I have a different idea. And I was trying to mix the two, and it just wasn't working. Yeah. I was going to make a branch cut off, but I knew that I was cutting it close to the hour, and I didn't want to break. I mean, I spent like, 5 minutes just a bit ago doing absolutely nothing. And even watching it myself, I was completely unsure what was this point, I was like, enough, Derek, just start painting. So I did. Here we go. I export the model, log of wood. I tried Alt-tabbing to Photoshop, but Photoshop's not open. There we go. See how tired I am? I'm looking for Quixel. Now, I don't need Quixel, but in the heat of the moment, it was the fastest way I could think of to get moss. And when you're under a deadline, you need to think on your toes. And my toes said, open Quixel right now. There's moss in there. I'm just putting the textures inside of the engine when I realize I'm missing some textures. So I make the zone map and I need to make a normal map. So to do that, I grayscale the color image, and then I play with the levels to make the valleys deeper and the ridges higher. And then I apply a plugin which takes the grayscale value and gives it a depth, a height value. And there you have it. Now, in the real world sense, I should have also made a displacement map, which would have upped the realism of the model a ton. And here we go. I keep all the fumbling and I keep all these loading scenes in there to better illustrate the time. It also makes it so that I don't have to cut the film a bunch of times and lowers editing. And it's nice just to show you guys the raw things that I have to go through. There will be one cut, I think, and that's where I cut in the render, I believe. So here's the piece of wood, and you're noticing all these edges around it. That's because they're not soft. So here I have to select all the edges that would essentially be round. Not round, but that add to a curved surface, and I soften the normals, which allows light to be equal to all directions of the off the surface of the object. Here, soften edge. There we go. So you can see all those edges there on the model. That looks like rectangular strips. After I soften the edges, come back. We are given a much more cylindrical shape instead of these crisp edges. That looks like some, what was it, 30 edges around? I don't know the name of that. Tridecahedra, I don't know. Some math term. So here I find moss, and unluckily, all we have is stone and steel. So I'm like, screw it. Let's grab the stone moss and use that and make a pillar. No, I don't change it to a pillar. All I do is simply turn the stone off. I don't need the stone. I just need the moss. So I have to reapply the wood so that I know what it looks like with moss on it. Except I'm doing this on the fly and I've never used this function before. So you're watching me learn how to use this function. And it didn't take too long. We are close to the finish line. All I did was add wood to the stone moss material, which allowed me to see the wood instead of the stone that I turned off. And there you go. But I wanted this to look like it had been sitting there for a while. Like someone had to cut it. And they sat there for a little bit. Except some of this moss looks like it was sitting there because it had rained and it was equal around the entire object. So I have to change where that is. I have to paint out where that is, and eventually I get to the realization that I need objectional weathering. Like, if they're sitting there, it's going to grow moss more in one direction than it will in the other, based off of what is closest to what. noticing something as I'm painting this. I'm noticing that what's making it look extremely fake right now is that it's straight. A real tree is far from straight. If you look out your window right now, you'll see that every tree is gnarled and twisted some way or the other. It's thin here, it's thick over there. So I keep painting and I deal with this straight log later. So I'm just going over it to make sure it's somewhat acceptable, and I went over the hour time frame because I was fumbling so much. Actual time spent working on the model is just about an hour, so I will count that as a minor success. So now I'm exporting the texture so that I don't have to fake it anymore. My song stopped playing, so I restarted it. Okay. So now I need to render it for you guys to make something representable. Presentable? Wow, the exhaustion is hitting it. Presentable. So I'm just reapplying the textures, and I have to create a roughness map. That's the last step. So to do that, I need to take the grayscale image I worked with earlier, and I have to make it somewhat generic, or closer to 50% gray, so that the light isn't too sharp or soft. And this is there's too much contrast here. It's too noisy. So if we play with the levels, we take the high grays and we make them low, and we take the low grays and we make them high. So this is the final product. Once I finished that spec map, all I did was rearrange one log to look like many, and I bent it. I twisted the log a little bit so there was some variation to the silhouette. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you